Thank you, Robert. Distinguished guests, former Director Woolsey, it's an honor and a privilege to be here today on the 75th anniversary of this founding of the Office of Strategic Services. It's a particular pleasure to be here among such esteemed colleagues from the diplomatic and intelligence communities. But I want to pay special tribute to our veterans of the OSS and their families for their sacrifices and their contributions to our country over many years. I'm delighted to be here to represent the Department of State's Bureau of Intelligence and Research, which, as Robert indicated, is a direct descendant of the OSS Research and Analysis Branch. I want to defer to my colleagues who have already touched upon the many and wonderful contributions the OSS made in the field in operational terms, and focus a little bit more on the critical contribution that the Office of Research and Analysis Branch made, while touching as well upon the current role of INR as its successor. When OSS was disbanded at the end of the war in 1945, a debate ensued regarding the disposition of its constituent parts. It was decided that the Research and Analysis Branch would come over to the Department of State. This was a decision, I should note, that was accepted by the State Department only begrudgingly, because it knew well the reputation of OSS researchers and analysts for their independence and predilection for speaking truth to power. This is one OSS trait that I'm proud to indicate and testify has remained a hallmark of INR in the years since. In fact, outside the INR front office hangs the organizational chart of the OSS with the Research and Analysis Branch highlighted to remind all of us every day of our distinguished heritage. As General Donovan and his team labored to organize the Office of Strategic Services, the Research and Analysis Branch was one of the first parts of the OSS to be stood up. Its purpose was to identify German and Japanese strengths and weaknesses using all available sources of information. It comprised men and women from a wide variety of academic disciplines: historians, economists, political scientists, geographers, psychologists, anthropologists, and diplomats. OSS analysts and researchers spent countless hours in libraries, poring over newspapers, reading trade and industry journals, and studying foreign government statistics. Their dedication and professionalism and attention to even the most seemingly trivial detail has remained a model for INR and the entire intelligence community analytic corps throughout these intervening decades. Many famous names made contributions to the Research and Analysis Branch: Arthur Schlesinger Jr., Sherman Kent, William Langer, Ralph Bunch, who's already been mentioned and whose name hangs above our library in the Department of State, Robert Murphy, David Bruce, and Hugh Montgomery, the former head of INR who passed away just this past April. Research and analysis veterans included 7 future presidents of the American Historical Association, 5 of the American Economic Associations, and 2 Nobel laureates. It is in the footsteps of these giants and countless others, anonymous, patriotic Americans, that INR has tried to tread for the past 75 years, through hot war and cold, through uncertain global shifts, and rapid technological changes. And while we like to think we have kept faith with the mission of the Research and Analysis Branch, it is clear that no individual or organization is right all of the time, but we still hold ourselves to the ideals and to the standards which our forefathers set for us. And just as the Research and Analysis Branch of the OSS fulfilled a unique role in wartime intelligence, its successor, INR, has played a unique role in the post-war intelligence community. INR's primary mission is to provide full-service intelligence support to the Secretary of State and other State Department policymakers. We give them decision-making advantage as they seek to protect, and advance American interests around the world. Often, that means telling policymakers what they don't want to hear, but what they need to know. To do that, we need to know what is going on in all countries, on all issues, all of the time. And INR's analysts have often been on the mark. In 1964, INR predicted the strong likelihood of a Chinese atomic test, which Secretary of State Dean Rusk was enabled to announce to the world 2 weeks before the event. During the Vietnam War, INR analysts critically assessed the Pentagon's evaluation of progress in South Vietnam. INR was the only element of the intelligence community to argue that Israel and Egypt would go to war in 1973, a prediction that not only turned out to be accurate, but was unwanted at senior levels of government. In the 2002 National Intelligence Estimate on Iraq's continuing programs for weapons of mass destruction, the majority of the intelligence community's agencies assessed that Iraq was reconstituting its nuclear program. INR dissented from that view, correctly, as it turns out. Make no mistake, whatever achievements we have made belong to no one element alone. These are achievements of a community of analysts and researchers across the intelligence community that has internalized the ethos of those intelligence analysis pioneers of the OSS. Many of those pioneers gave up secure and lucrative private sector jobs to help in the war effort, motivated by a deep sense of public service. This dedication to public service during wartime continued throughout the Cold War and the post-9/11 periods, and is still one of the distinguishing characteristics of the intelligence community today. And while painstaking work of today's intelligence analysis lacks the swashbuckling allure associated with the OSS, I would like to conclude my remarks by quoting an author who imagines what it is like to work in INR today. I want to believe, he writes, that at the start of an INR workday, the Assistant Secretary for Intelligence and Research stands on a desk and shouts to his team of 300 analysts, "Prepare your breakfast and eat hearty, for tonight we dine in hell." If that isn't the case, maybe it should be. For such a small bureau, INR has a vast portfolio with responsibilities ranging from weapons of mass destruction and cyber warfare to illegal drugs and human trafficking. Their work covers every inch of the map, and through desktop access goes to policymakers instantly. When they're wrong, terrible things happen, so they make sure they're never wrong. While obviously this contains a fair bit of hyperbole, I do not stand on my desk, I assure you, every morning at least, and shout. We don't also have 300 analysts, by the way. There were more Spartans at Thermopylae than we have analysts in INR. But I would like to think that the lessons that were passed on to us from the research and analysis branch of the OSS have been internalized and operationalized in the INR of today. So happy birthday, OSS. On behalf of the men and women of the Bureau of Intelligence and Research, I want to salute the sacrifice and contributions that our predecessors in OSS made in defense of our nation. This history and this tradition continues to inspire us and motivate us today to provide the best possible intelligence support to our policymakers. Thank you all.